Hi, everybody. My kids are back in school, so I could start doing more of these lives again. Oh, I forgot I like to do my, what's this called? Bait and switch, question mark, question mark. There. I like to do my text. Anyway, so it gets really old hearing guys on the internet say that their wife's libido decrease after the honeymoon stage was a bait and switch. So I felt that I should yet again tell you about the biological and evolutionary underpinnings of the honeymoon stage ending. Of course, just by the by, any man who's going to argue vociferously and rudely on the internet is probably not getting laid for far more reasons than are biological and evolutionary. Actually, those are biological and evolutionary. Women do not like angry men. Angry men are perceived as dangerous. So whenever anybody argues with me on the internet in an angry fashion about why they're not getting laid, I mean, like I'm seeing in real time why you're not getting laid, buddy. But anyway, for the people who are more interested and in evolution and biology, and of course, send me a like if that's you and if you're watching. I'm going to be up to 100,000 followers soon, so every little bit helps. So please do send your likes if you are watching me right now. So the evolutionary reasons for the honeymoon stage, and I just did a video on this, but it seems like you can't say it enough. Honeymoon stage lasts 1.5 to 3 years, long enough to find a man, make a baby, give birth, start nursing, wean your baby, and then move on. That's what biology would have us do. That's what would maximally increase the genetic diversity of our species. If every time a woman was fertile, she procreated with a different guy, that would maximally increase our genetic diversity. Women don't want to do that nowadays. Nobody wants to do that. There's a social fabric, of our society. People want to stay married to the same person. But that doesn't mean that there's no honeymoon stage. The new relationship energy, the honeymoon stage, is what keeps our species going. It makes people want to mate. So it's not a bait and switch when your wife's drive and just interest generally, drops after the honeymoon stage. You're moving into a different phase of your relationship that's not characterized by this biological, what I call drunk on love, new phase in the beginning. There's not the same level of oxytocin, dopamine, and send me likes if you're watching. I see 25 of you watching, so that's awesome. There's not the same dopamine, adrenaline. It's not that. So when you're also in new love, your serotonin drops, actually. It's like OCD. The brain scans of people in new love are like people with OCD. They keep thinking about the person that they're interested in over and over, and they want to get back to them. It's like an obsession. You can't just replicate that later on. You have a different phase of your relationship, and certainly the majority of people still do have sex and enjoy it. And you can love the person, obviously, deeply. You love them more and more. You build a life together. You can enjoy your bodies more and more. You have more experience sexually. But if you're looking for that new relationship energy and you're going to say that it's a bait and switch, that she isn't obsessed with sex anymore, well, I mean, she's also, why don't you get upset with her for like menstruating or dying one day or anything that happens to mammals, because that's what happens. Now, men also have a novelty effect because obviously it would be best for men to go sleep with a whole bunch of women too for the genetic diversity of our species, again. But men have a lot more testosterone and overall a higher sex drive. So that's why, they are fine. They do drop, It goes from a guy who could have sex 3 times in a night and is obsessed with the woman and is constantly looking at his phone to text her and thinking about cool things he could do and writing her love letters and being Mr. Romantic, to a guy who, thinks his wife's pretty hot. He's at work, doing his thing, but thinks about her. He texts her sometimes, he even plans a date night when he sees something that reminds him to do it. But he's not obsessed with her like he was at the beginning either. He just has a much higher sex drive. So he still wants to have sex, but he still doesn't want to do it 3 times in a night usually. Unless, of course, it's so unusual, because she never does. They're on vacation, so then they do that, right? But guys are not obsessed with the women after the new relationship stage. in the same way as they were during it either. And that's not a bait and switch either. So a woman wanting the guy to act as romantic as he did in the first months of dating, I mean, that's not reasonable either. And I don't hear women saying that. And when I do, when there are women that do say things like that, I say, but that's not realistic even at all. Let's get to what would look like realistic for a mature relationship, for a relationship past the honeymoon stage. You want him to plan a date night every other week? That sounds good. You want him to text you a little bit more? That sounds good. But he's not going to be obsessed with you. He got to focus on his job. You have a family now. He's got stuff to do. People need to have friends and hobbies. When you're in that new relationship stage, it's just the two of you obsessed with each other. Only the two of you intertwined. Sexually, romantically. That would not be adaptive afterwards. Because if you were that obsessed with each other once you had a baby, the baby would die, right? I mean, you would just be off having sex, and going on dates and going on surprise trips and stuff, and nobody would be feeding the baby. So obviously, the honeymoon stage is meant to make a baby. That's what it's meant for. So you could be, not wanting a baby, but it still happens biologically. It happens, of course, less when women are on birth control. They have lower sex drives on birth control because of this. There's no biological reason for them to become obsessed with a man. I have many clients who go off hormonal birth control and their sex drive comes back. And they have that same peak and decrease where drive goes up, it peaks at ovulation, and then it goes down. They never had that before in hormonal birth control. We women don't get told this stuff. You go, I remember when I was young, I haven't been on the pill for many, many years. I just tried it for a little bit. And it made me tired, made me feel bloated when I was in my early 20s. And it did make me have a lower sex drive. But I had already been off the pill. I hadn't started my life pretty much on the pill, as so many girls do when they do it for their skin or for regulating their period. So basically they're 16 or younger, they get on the pill. They have no idea what their normal sex drive would be. So they get on the pill and it just is what it is. And I have clients in their 20s, 30s, even 40s who get off hormonal birth control for pretty much the first time, except when they're pregnant. And they're like, holy shit, my sex drive was down this whole time, because of course it is. The pill makes you a little bit like pregnant. It's like how you feel when you're pregnant because you're not ovulating. And the period you get on your pill is not a real period, by the way. It's called withdrawal bleeding. It's just the sugar pills in your pack. It's the week of placebo pills with hormones in them. They originally did that because it makes women feel better, like it's more natural to be on the pill if they still have their period. But you could just go right to the next hormonal pills in the pack and never get your period. And more young women do that. So this wasn't what I meant to talk about originally, but if your wife is on hormonal birth control or you are a woman on hormonal birth control, you likely have no idea what your natural sex drive is at all, And that's something to talk about with your provider. Hi, Cyril, and hello, Rob. Yes, no kidding about anything that I've been talking about. There has been no kidding yet, Rob. So, if anybody has any questions about this, about honeymoon stage, bait and switch, libido, natural obsession at the beginning. I mean, the thing is that guys talk about like, why did she sell herself as a high sex drive woman? She felt like she was a high sex drive woman. She felt it was you and your magic penis. She was so happy. She finally met the love of her life. She's obsessed with you. You're obsessed with her. She doesn't think, first of all, women know nothing about biology, as don't men. Like, neither one. It's not like we have a class that's like, well, when you meet a guy, your sex drive's going to go through the roof, but that's not how it's going to be forever. Nobody talks like that. Instead, you see romantic comedies, men see porn, women read romance novels, and everybody thinks that they're just going to be having sex forever like rabbits. I mean, this just doesn't happen. Rob said the hormonal birth control pill /I, what's that, implant? Yeah, that stuff, changes your sex drive, obviously, because you're not ovulating. Women have a high sex drive outside of the honeymoon stage when they're ovulating. If something blocks ovulation, like after menopause, you don't ovulate anymore, so you don't have a high sex drive, and or injection, whatever. But if you feel basically the same over the course of the whole month, and it's basically like, there's no reason for you to want sex if you're not ovulating as a woman, unless it's that new phase. So women are as shocked as the men are when their sex drive goes down after the honeymoon phase. So they always assume that it's something that the man did because that's what society tells you. If he was being romantic, then you would still want sex exactly the same way. No, you would not. Of course not. That's biology. That's evolution. He could be doing all the same things. It's like saying if my husband was just a better husband, I would stay young forever. I would never wrinkle. I would never go through menopause, and I would never die. All that guy has to do is get me flowers and write me love poems, and I just stay in the same phase of life eternally. Tuck everlasting. No, that's crazy. There's nothing a man can do to keep his wife in the honeymoon phase, and there's nothing he can do to keep himself in that obsessive honeymoon phase himself. What we have to do is say, okay, that was then, this is now. I used to be a teenager too, and now I'm not. I used to be a child, and now I'm not. We go into different phases of life. Honeymoon stage is great when it's not there. Then you have to understand how to harness responsive desire, such that you say, okay, well, we're still going to have sex. We're not going to be jonesing for it in the same way that you can't even get through a work day because you want to have sex so bad. Like when you're in the honeymoon stage, you're obsessed with somebody. It's not going to be like that, obviously. But if we start having sex, we've gotten to know each other's bodies and we learn more about each other and we explore, then responsive desire can kick in, because spontaneous desire is not going to be there except before ovulation for most monogamous women, particularly as they age. Because why would it be? Think about it evolutionarily. Why would it be? You're the same partner, and also they're getting older, progressively less fertile, and so are you, Everybody's sex drive drops over time. It's so funny, these guys that want their postmenopausal wives to still be having the same amount of sex. How would you have liked it if somebody was bothering your grandmother like that? Your grandmother, the one who baked you cookies. Like, did you want somebody constantly asking her for blowjobs? Probably not. Give somebody a break. If they can still be having some sexual contact with you after their body is literally closed down for business, for fertility, great. But to expect that to in any way be the same as a woman many years younger and at a different phase is silly. Does this mean you have to stay married? Certainly not. If the be all and end all of your life is getting sex 3 times a week, from a woman who acts excited and enthusiastic about it like a younger woman, leave. I talk about this in my menopause podcast. But then, of course, you will be the guy that did leave your wife, for something that she cannot control. Now, of course, you should still be trying to have sex sometimes, right? But sometimes, maybe weekly. It's not going to be like 3 times a week like when she was younger. It's just not. Just like you as the man, if you're listening as the man, as you age, your penis is not going to act the same way. Your body's not going to be as attractive. Your stamina isn't going to be there the same way. What really screwed a lot of people, no pun intended, was the advent of Viagra, obviously, because the couple was going in the same direction, and then all of a sudden he feels like, because he can have this artificial erection, it's just same as like when people go on testosterone. And they feel like all of a sudden, because things have changed for them, it's supposed to change for their partner, but it doesn't. And so many women go on hormones, some it works for them, and some have side effects of it. So testosterone is the sex hormone for both men and women. Some women take testosterone and they don't do well with it. They get like you would expect of somebody on testosterone. They break out, they get bloated, they get aggressive, irritable, mood issues. It's like being a teenage boy. So the point of this whole thing is that you have to understand and come to terms with biology, life. We don't live forever. We don't stay in the same phase of life forever. I have a podcast called Age is Not Just a Number. You would not buy, if you went on Craigslist, if there is even still Craigslist, and you went to somebody and to buy a puppy, and you showed up and it was a 12-year-old dog, and they said, oh, don't worry, it acts like a puppy. You wouldn't say, okay. Maybe you'd feel bad for the dog that it has an idiot owner and you would buy it anyway, but you wouldn't just say, oh, I guess it's a puppy because everybody's agreeing it's a puppy, the emperor's new puppy. No, you would never expect your 12-year-old dog to cavort like a 6-month-old, right? So then how do people expect themselves to last eternally? And I have a whole podcast about why people are worse about aging now for my sociology fans. Basically, with technology and biotech and big pharma, you think you could just live forever. You can't. The honeymoon stage doesn't last forever. Being a teenager doesn't last forever. Being young doesn't last forever. That's really the TLDR. Being young doesn't last forever. Dave here. How can you help someone understand that you might not be the main or only cause of the drop-off and there are other reasons to be aware of? Well, you would go to couples counseling. I mean, a couples counselor should not be like, well, she would be trying to jump your bones 15 times a week like she was in those early stages of dating, except you're just not a perfect man. If you have a couples counselor like that, which I don't think most people do, but I've heard horror stories. If you have a couples counselor that firmly believes that all you have to do is work on the emotion and then somehow magically sex will come back after 15 to 20 years of dead bedroom, give me a break, man, right? I mean, you gotta be in couples counseling, but it's got to be somebody who at least understands sex, who identifies as sex positive. They don't have to be like, the world's foremost research scholar. Those people aren't doing clinical work anyway on sex. But I mean, at least somebody who talks about like natural drives and biology and responsive desire and educates women on what happens, because there are a lot of women that do think that they have no drive because their husband just isn't romantic enough. And that's not their fault. That's just how men think that women get off after 30 seconds of penetration because they watch too much porn. And women watch too much rom-coms, and nobody understands that people don't talk, about sex. That's why I try to talk about sex on my videos and my podcast and within couples counseling. Nobody talks about sex. So, it's not like women ever get a lesson like about what responsive desire is or anything. They assume the man's going to come in there like, sweep her off her feet, teach her about her body. It's going to be this enlightenment where she just learns from him. Who's him? Him is a guy her same age, that it's basically his second sexual encounter and his first that wasn't wasted. And women expect this guy to be like the sex guru. People come in, they're like, oh, it's his fault that I'm not getting off. It's his fault. He had like 4 partners. 2 of them were like 20 years old. They wouldn't have told him given him any negative feedback if it killed them because they were shy young girls. And 2 of them were drunk one-night stands. Who was supposed to teach this man where your clitoris is, You are, if anything. But that's not what women think. They think that the man's going to come in there and it's going to be a transformation. He's going to teach them all about themselves. And then the manosphere says the same thing. You got to teach her. You got to create the vibe. Sure, if you have a lot of experience, but otherwise, how the hell do you know how to create anything? The ideal thing is for the couple to learn together, and this is why people come in. They go to my intimacy coach, Heather, me, people that work for me, other people in the world that have nothing to do with me, and of course, listen to podcasts, read books. There's lots of books on sex, Wanting Sex Again is a good one. Point is here. Nobody is immune to biology, aging, or the vicissitudes of time as that manifests in the honeymoon stage receding, obviously. When you think about it, isn't it obvious? And also, people need to be actively engaged in their own happiness. So if you think your husband is bad in bed, you got to work with him to be better in bed. And that's my kid's orthodontist calling. So I got to go. Bye, guys.